This is your last chance to get a question in on this BIM conference. Cormac.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this? Oh, yes. Yeah, Cormac Allen from the DIT School of Architecture and College of Engineering and Built Environment. I attended all the education sessions today and over the last 2 days, and we saw presentations from DIT, Waterford IT, GMIT, Letterkenny, Trinity and University of Ulster. And what's emerging is a very similar range of responses in terms of the education area, and very clearly a pedagogical potential of the collaborative experience, and this is something that we should engage with. So I think that there's a need for more systematic development of BIM in undergraduate education, expanding to include all of the disciplines. And in this, I think there's a great opportunity for CITA to reinvigorate its education committee with an agenda to develop what I would think is a possible national strategy about embedding BIM education in undergraduate education. And there were two patterns in the discussions in the various meetings. And the first was that where architectural technologists are involved, it tends to be that discipline that is leading the development of BIM in the education sector. And the other pattern is that architects are not engaging. I mean, this is consistent across all the schools on both parts of the island. And I would urge that, to quote Robert Venturi from Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, it's not an either or, but it's a both and approach. We can continue to teach with traditional techniques as well as using digital technologies. And to come to a question, I suppose, for Calvac, I wonder, would you have any reflections on your experience as an undergraduate architecture student and what you would like to be doing in college if you were in college now?
I would still is this mic working? Yeah. I would always believe as an architect you should be familiar with traditional techniques, and certainly in terms of design, an architect should still be drawing with pen and pencil, but should be equally capable in Revit or should I say in BIM. In terms of our future recruitment as a firm, anybody without BIM experience will have a distinct disadvantage because we're fully committed to it. It doesn't really break down for us between architects and technicians or technologists. We're requiring all of our people internally to become fully competent and across the board, across the disciplines, and we'll be recruiting in the same way. But particularly for those who are designing, I think it's actually a fantastic tool. I personally would always start with pen and paper, which is the most fluid thing of all, but actually good BIM programs are equally fluid and can very quickly translate that initial pen and paper idea into a quick model around which you can begin to talk about ideas with your client. So it should not be seen either as just a technical thing that you bring in at some point further down the project. Should be used from the very start by design architects and later by technical production people, all as one integrated fluid process.
If I could first, though, the opening statement part of your question, Cormac, in terms of a coordinating role, would any of our other panellists have a view as to whether there should be a coordinating role, for example, by CITA?
Yeah, no, well, from my end of it, from being at the bottom of the supply chain on the site as such, definitely a coordinated role, more collaboration, more working together, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get a solution that will benefit all our clients. And as David touched on earlier, he's trying to save time, he's trying to save money, he's got to move production, he's got to start delivering for his customers, and he's losing time on that. And also it'll benefit on the safety side of it, it'll benefit on rework, coordination, so it'll improve the quality. So where CITA can take control there, yes, I'd be delighted if they could step up and drive that side of it. Yes, for us it'd be brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ralph?
Yeah, just I suppose it's a question for David, but just through the 2 days we've heard a lot about BIM being done in different places, and you might have an architect on a project doing BIM but maybe not the engineers, or maybe the design team are doing BIM but it doesn't get through to the contractors, and it was interesting what you said, that you know, when you have to evaluate a design you're not getting BIM, and so you're having to do that back in a paper process. So I suppose the one party that has a sort of overall arching interest in the project going really well would be the client, you know. And so, I mean, architects are doing BIM because it helps their business. It's a more productive way of working. They probably don't have an overarching interest, you know, in how well the mechanical subcontractor can evaluate their design and how quickly and how efficiently they can. But I suppose a client definitely would have the interest that the project goes well from start to finish. And I was just wondering, from Diageo's point of view, as a client, do you have any protocols in place or any sort of vision that you impart to your design teams as to how you would preferably like to see projects rolling out?
Yeah, a very good question. I'm not too sure I can give it as good an answer as the question was. When we look at it, we look very much from a client's perspective. You know, we're in the alcoholic drinks business. We're not in the engineering business. So actually, we don't have the resources or funds available to us to determine what we should do on BIM. We will rely on the people we work with and our trusted advisors to help us with that. But I can't stress enough, it has to make money. You know, we're in business to make money. The architectural practices are in business to make money. I can see where for architectural practices it makes money. I can see for the engineering companies it makes money. I'm still struggling a little bit to figure out where for the client it actually makes money. Is probably.
Well, just to elaborate, I suppose, as a client, for instance, if the mechanical subcontractor has to take drawings that have been produced from a BIM model and reproduce them in another environment in order to do their work, surely you are paying for that as a client. Ultimately, you know, that's being built into the cost of the whole process. So, you know, you're paying for the information 3 or 4 times. You're paying the architect to produce the information in a digital format. They're dumbing it down into paper drawings. The contractors are picking that up, rebuilding it to do construction models. They're probably dumbing that down onto paper drawings, giving it to a subcontractor who's then reproducing the information in fabrication models. And surely that's built into the process, and it's all coming back to you as a client. And so.
True, but I'm a very, probably other gathered, I'm a very challenging client. I haven't seen a reduction in either my architectural or civil engineering or mechanical electrical costs as a result. So actually, for us the challenge is really, really straightforward. You know, if you want us to invest money, it either has to give us a cash flow improvement or it's got to give us a net present value improvement. It's realistically got to be one of the two. I think when you see, you know, when you listen to the sort of ready example of Ballymore Homes looking for better quality, the reason Ballymore Homes are looking for better quality is so they can charge more. So therefore it's driving value. And if the BIM process does that, that's very, very good. If it drives, you know, lower costs for us, lower construction costs or whatever. One of the things we see though is because the cost of engineers and architects and their time has gotten so high over time, it's cheaper to reroute the pipe on site than it is to pay somebody hours and hours and hours to figure out that it should be rerouted. So you get quite an amount of this, and I think in some of the talks you heard is that, you know, the BIM piece has been done, but then they forgot the trunking, they forgot the cable, they forgot the guy couldn't get a ladder up to it, so it has to be moved on site anyway. So for us, I think the biggest hurdle to using it a lot is actually coordination and everybody using the same system. Until it becomes like Microsoft Windows, and you can take one thing out of one laptop and put it into another. You know, I was able to arrive at my PowerPoint presentation today, plug it in, and away we went. And it didn't matter what version of PowerPoint I had or what version they had here. It worked. And actually, for a client, until the business can do that, actually, it's not of huge value to us because we don't see that the savings you've described until that happens.
Thanks,
no,
Dave.
that's helpful.
Hold on there, Ralph. John in front, and then we've got a question at the back, and I know people are looking at their watches for trains, etc.
Yes. I have a question here for the two mechanical gentlemen on what is the left of the podium here. First, Richard, and then Martin. You're at the end, the bottom end of the design process. You're often the last person or one of the last people who get involved. If you looked at it from your perspective, how many steps in the design process could your early engagement eliminate right through to prefabrication Martin, if that's appropriate in the particular circumstance. Maybe you could just briefly comment on it, both of you.
I suppose from the consultancy point of view, we can often get involved late. Sometimes early, but if it's D&B, you might be involved late. And one of the biggest ongoing battles we have is for the M&E subcontractors to sort out their specialists. And that causes grief, which means the M&E subcontractor should be involved a lot earlier, and procurement slows that down. Slowing down the procurement, even the MEP subcontractor appointed last or late, is costing huge money. You know, the money you would save by having them involved early, having that sprinkler designer on board with you first day, stops us having to do jobs twice.
For myself, it would be a reduction on things like RFIs. If we're constantly having to ask lots of questions about the design that we received, that's back and forth. We also have to do submittal process for our technical submittals, which takes time. It's back into poor Richard. He has to spend time looking at it, assessing it. Again, then you're looking at in technical submittals, you're also having to put your drawings back in for approval. So your coordinate drawings have to go back in. So that's adding more time to the process and more time that Richard could be also benefiting. So where we're brought in early, we found that we can actually save when we're on the same table with the guys while they're designing it. We can actually benefit and solve a lot of those problems early, which will then allow us to speed up the construction at the back end, which will benefit the commissioning. So working together is the best way forward.
And thank you. We'll take our final question from down the back.
It's two questions. David, how did you procure the work?
We've procured the work in I think in many ways. The civil and architectural piece was very traditional, and all of the process equipment is all turnkey design and build. They're performance contracts more than design and build contracts.
So I don't find it surprising that you've not seen any benefit from any savings that the architects and builders made, because there's no route for them to pass money back to you. If they make savings, that goes straight into their back pockets. I imagine you will see savings if you've got the model to play with when you come to maintain what they've delivered for you. Have you looked and thought about how the model is going to help you with that and help you save money with that in the way that we heard yesterday from Penn State? It's saving them significant amounts of money on their campus.
I think how do I best describe it? I think there's huge advantage to BIM, so don't hear me saying there isn't. I suppose my comment is that it isn't sufficiently developed as a common platform as of yet for it to work. And actually for it to work in a maintenance environment, it then has to interact with your maintenance management system. So if we have to take all of the information out of a BIM model and put it into our SAP maintenance module, then that just creates cost for me. I might as well put it straight into the SAP model in the first place. I think there's also a piece about engineers being a little bit theoretical about maintenance. You get these models that will tell you, how long the light bulbs will last in this room and when we should replace them. But there are very, very few clients around nowadays who can actually afford to take every light bulb out of this room and replace it, whether it's working or not. Almost every business like this runs on the basis of having somebody who runs around the building and changes light bulbs as they go during the day, because the cost structure of having to take them all out, throw them away before time, just doesn't work for us in terms of cash flow. So that's probably the challenge for it. I think there's a piece about getting clients more involved for what they actually do, as opposed to what they theoretically would suggest they do, or what their PowerPoint slideshow from the maintenance engineering manager says he would like to do until he meets the finance director and says, I can't afford that.
Thanks, Dave. Actually, a very interesting final question that will probably prompt some follow-on discussion around the watering hole. Before I hand over to Ken and Alan, could I, given I think the late session on Friday afternoon, I think our speakers did an excellent job at keeping us interested and motivated and awake. So could I ask you to show your appreciation for our speakers?